You've probably heard many would-be politicians shouting, "Drill, baby, drill, frack Britain, fire up the coal plants." It sounds decisive. It sounds like they know what they're talking about, and it pulls on nostalgic heartstrings. But none of it survives 5 minutes of scrutiny. So the claim is Britain can fix its energy crisis by drilling, fracking, and restarting coal mining and electricity generation. The question I have is, do these ideas actually work, or are they just political theatre? So today we're going to look at increasing North Sea gas production, fracking for gas, coal production, and why none of them would lower your energy bills. UK North Sea oil and gas production has been in long-term decline for decades. It peaked in the late 20th century with production now at a fraction of what it was at its height. UK gas output is falling naturally as fields mature and reservoirs deplete. Official UK government data shows that UK oil and gas production has fallen about 72% since 1999, and domestic gas production continues to fall annually. By the late 2020s, even if we develop new gas fields, UK gas production is expected to fall below what is needed just for domestic heating, never mind industrial needs. The North Sea was a huge energy bonanza for the UK in the 1970s through the 1990s. But that era is behind us. The geology simply doesn't have the same volumes of gas left for us to extract. What's left of the UK's gas reserves is in small, technically complex pockets of gas that are much more expensive to extract, certainly when compared to earlier discoveries. This is one of the reasons investment into the North Sea sector has dropped, with no new exploration wells being drilled in 2025 at all. And this is the lowest level of activity in the North Sea we've seen since oil and gas were first found. UK fields are often high cost relative to global competitors, meaning UK gas producers need higher prices just to be able to break even. Even if a government encouraged drilling, the remaining gas is not cheap or easy to get out of the ground. Companies will only invest if they think they can make money. And with the expense of UK gas compared to other options around the world, that's where they're investing their money. But the argument is, it works for Norway. Well, Norway's North Sea gas sector is much bigger, it's state owned and managed, and it benefits from a sovereign wealth model. In contrast, the UK side is geologically more mature. We've extracted much more of the gas that is readily available to us, making it less productive, and it is owned and operated by corporations rather than by the state. Norway exports large volumes of its gas globally, often at market rates, and its state takes a high share of those profits and invests it into a sovereign wealth fund for the benefit of the Norwegian people. UK gas fields, major beneficiaries, are shareholders of the gas companies. Just because both companies extract gas from the North Sea doesn't mean we have the same geology, the same field size, or the same opportunities going forward. So even if there was more gas coming out of the North Sea, it doesn't mean we'd get cheaper gas for UK homes. Gas producers sell the gas that they extract on global markets at the prevailing prices. The UK doesn't have some special pact that forces domestic gas to stay in the UK at discounted prices. Most gas prices are set internationally. A producer will sell where they can get the best price. And that's standard across the global commodity markets. UK gas infrastructure is interconnected with Europe, meaning it's very easy for UK gas suppliers to ship their gas off to the continent if they can get a better price for it. And this is determined by the markets, not by politics. Even if you extracted 100% of the available gas and made it available to the UK market, UK consumers would still have to pay global market rates, not some artificially low domestic price, and no amount of politicians' wishes are going to change that. Now, there's always been an argument made that because North Sea operators in the UK are private companies, that they don't really contribute to the economy. And that's not true. North Sea operators already pay multiple profit related taxes, including corporation tax, supplemental charges, and windfall taxes, which total a pretty high tax rate. This goes into the government coffers, but like all tax income, it's spent almost immediately. Norway, on the other hand, takes the profits from gas, not taxes on profits, it takes the whole profit from gas, pays the gas company that extracted it, and invests the rest of the profit into a sovereign wealth fund for the benefit of its people. Now, the government in recent years has seen tax receipts fall, and governments don't like it when their tax receipts go down. So they've been looking at new ways to tax the oil and gas industry. But as production wanes and effective tax regimes have shifted, this has had the effect of discouraging investment by the industry into the North Sea. Companies are obliged to fund the decommissioning of old platforms and infrastructure once fields become uneconomic, which adds a significant cost and reduces profits which go to their shareholders. So again, they're unlikely to want to invest in the North Sea because a new government says we're going to drill, baby, drill, if it's not economical for them and they can't produce profits for their shareholders. As it stands today, the UK model gives a lot of advantages to the oil and gas industry, but the country that owns the resources seem to get less than the shareholders. So, to summarise North Sea gas, North Sea gas peaked decades ago, and it's been in a steady decline ever since. The remaining gas, and there is still quite a lot of gas in the North Sea, but it is much more expensive to access, it is geologically difficult for them to get it out, and therefore it costs a lot more. And even if we found more gas, it would be sold on global markets, not sold cheaply to UK households. Politicians comparing UK to Norway's large exports don't reflect the different geology, the scale, or the state involvement. We might both be mining in the North Sea, but we're both doing it in a very different way. And producers do pay taxes despite what others tell you, but they've also got to cover decommissioning costs. And this is a huge amount of cost that goes on to their business. So reality is there's no hidden pot of free energy. It all has to be paid for. So if North Sea gas isn't an option for us going forward, what about fracking? Fracking sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Until you look at the reality. The fracking argument usually goes like this. There is gas right under our feet. Drill it like the Americans do. You don't need offshore rigs. It'll give us cheap gas for Britain. On paper, it sounds really compelling. No expensive offshore platforms. Onshore wells are much easier to access. You don't need helicopters to take crews out to them. Much shorter pipelines to get the gas to the customers, and much easier to decommission when they're on land rather than at sea. But the argument only works if the geology, the scale, and the economics are comparable, and they aren't. The comparison with the United States is fundamentally flawed because when it comes to fracking, scale matters, and it matters a lot. The US shale basins, the Permian, the Marcellus, the Bakken, are vast, they're in sparsely populated areas, and they have a lot of gas density in those fields. The UK, by comparison, is a small country, it is densely populated, and its shale formations are geologically complex. And this means that the gas volume that we can get from those shale deposits is significantly less. Even optimistic UK estimates suggest shale gas could supply a small fraction of the UK's demand and for a limited amount of time. UK fracking will never approach the US style of production volumes, not even come close. And the other big problem is the space that it requires. The US's shale economics rely upon drilling thousands of wells and continuing to drill new wells continuously. I'll pop an image on the screen. This is just one small portion of one shale gas field. Now, can you imagine this all up and down the UK? The level of industrialisation across England would be politically and socially toxic. Fracking only works and it's only economical at massive scale. And the UK simply doesn't have the space, the geology, or the public tolerance for it. And where the argument really falls apart is UK fracking would be high cost gas, not cheap gas. Wells here would need to be more complex because of the geology, they would be slower to drill, and they'd be subject to much tighter regulation than they are in the US. We would need earthquake monitoring, and we would need to be able to shut down these plants should we start to see earth tremors. And crucially, even after all of that, once the gas is out of the ground, it would still be sold at market prices, essentially the same as North Sea gas. If a gas producer can get a better price abroad, then the gas will go through the pipeline to the continent to wherever they can get the most money for it. There is no mechanism that allows the UK to produce gas and force the gas companies to sell it to us cheaply. Fracking doesn't bypass the global markets, it plugs straight into them. Now, let's go back to earthquakes and tremors and the other risks associated with fracking, because these aren't hypothetical. These have already happened in the UK in the very small number of trials that have already happened. UK fracking trials cause measurable earth tremors, including events strong enough to damage people's property. The UK has one of the strictest seismic thresholds in the world, far lower than what's allowed in the US. That means that operations need to be repeatedly paused or halted due to seismic activity. This is known as a risk to investors, and investors don't want to put their money into something where they might be shut down with no notice without any indication of when they would be allowed to start up again. But possibly one of the biggest risks is groundwater contamination. Because of the way fracking works, it's known as hydraulic fracturing, where a slurry material is pumped under the ground to fracture the rocks apart to allow the gas to be extracted. If that slurry material gets into the aquifers and starts to contaminate groundwater, then we get real problem. Now, because of the UK's geology, we have multiple layers rather than one big basin. This does reduce that risk slightly. But well failures do happen, especially when wells have been running for a long time. It's very, very easy for a small crack to become something serious, and this can leak into the groundwater. And in a country where aquifers are critical and populations are dense, tolerance for this kind of risk is extremely low. Now, going back to the earth tremors for a moment, I heard a great quote the other day that said, "In Texas, a tremor rattles a barn and upsets a few cows. In Lancashire, it rattles whole towns." That's the difference. We don't have the space here in the UK that they do in states like Texas, where we can put these fracking fields away from population centres. Now, the political reality of fracking is it's heading to a legal dead end. The current government, the Labour Party, has proposed an outright legal ban on fracking. Now, what does this mean? A statutory ban, once it goes through Parliament, is much harder to reverse than a simple policy pause or a document that the government puts out. Once it's been voted on by Parliament, the ban comes into force. Any future government would need to introduce new legislation to undo that. Now, this creates a long-term uncertainty for investors because it's, well, what if the legislation doesn't get through Parliament? What if it gets held up in the House of Lords? What will that do to our investment? Investors really hate it when they're reliant upon the government to do something, to pass a law to allow them to make money from their investment. So even if a future government wanted to do fracking, companies would be extremely reluctant to invest the billions needed into something that could be shut down really quickly. Now, the real deal breaker here when it comes to fracking is local opposition. Fracking consistently faces strong local resistance, refusals by planning departments, protests and legal challenges to every single move the fracking companies want to make. Now, this isn't abstract. People don't want industrial drilling rigs near their homes, their schools, their farmland, or anywhere that they can be seen. One of the great advantages of offshore drilling is the huge drilling infrastructure is generally over the horizon, out at sea, out of sight, out of mind. And the other thing to bear in mind here is these drilling rigs don't really bring any benefits to the local community. The number of jobs that are created because of them is very small. The communities have to carry the disruption of having these in their community. And again, local councils have to pick up a lot of the costs. You can't frack a densely populated country without upsetting pretty much everybody. So who actually benefits from fracking? So it's one of these topics that comes up time and time again, and people keep pushing it. Well, politicians keep pushing it. The reality is, in the best case scenario, fracking in the UK would deliver modest volumes of gas. It would be sold at international prices. It would be a short-term production thing because the gas fields themselves aren't that big. And it would be a highly politically charged argument and bring environmental costs with it. So who benefits from that? Well, shareholders of the companies that are investing in fracking, the gas producers themselves, people that speculate on the gas market. Who doesn't benefit? UK households, because there is no mechanism for us to get cheap gas. Local communities that have to put up with the disruption of having this in their community, and our energy security. Having this production in the UK doesn't make the UK more energy secure because these companies can just ship all the gas to the continent and sell it on the global market. Fracking doesn't lower your bills. It doesn't make us energy independent. It mainly shifts money from the ground to corporate balance sheets. Okay, I've left the worst for last. Coal. Now, nostalgia isn't an energy policy because people say, bring back coal. Coal was cheap. It's amazing how we remember a couple of things about coal, but we don't remember all of the real downsides of coal. They frame coal as it's simple, it's cheap, it's reliable, it was a big employer, and historically, all of that was true. When coal seams were shallow, close to the surface, the seams themselves were thick and they were easy to access. But coal mines in the UK didn't close because they ran out of coal. They closed because the remaining coal was too deep, too fragmented, and too expensive to extract. Productivity collapsed. Imported coal became cheaper than domestically produced coal. And mining costs rose faster than electricity prices. So there wasn't a market to sell the coal that was made in the UK here in the UK. Coal didn't die because of politics, it died because it stopped making economic sense. Now, coal mining is dangerous. It always was and it always will be. Coal mining is one of the most dangerous industrial jobs ever undertaken in the UK. There are well-documented impacts. Lung disease within coal miners, what is known as black lung from breathing in all the coal dust. Chronic respiratory illnesses, high rates of injury and even death while working underground. And the disasters weren't just underground. There were disasters on the surface as well. Many of you will be old enough to remember the Aberfan disaster in 1966 when a coal spoil tip collapsed onto a village in Wales. It killed 144 people, including 116 children who were at school at the time. And this disaster was entirely preventable. It was caused by decades of unsafe waste practices, just stacking the spoil until eventually the whole pile collapsed. Coal didn't just scar the land, it scarred generations of people. But the environmental damage from coal was massive. Coal has left visible permanent marks on the UK. Huge spoil heaps across Wales, Yorkshire and the Midlands, contaminated waterways, land subsidence and long-term soil pollution are still things that we're dealing with today. And then there's the air pollution. Anybody remember the Great Smog of London? This was caused by coal smoke from power stations in London combining with fog on cold mornings and producing a thick, dense, unbreathable smog. Smog is estimated to have killed 12,000 people because of the pollution into the atmosphere. And it led directly to the Clean Air Acts. In fact, it has permanently changed UK air quality laws. When people talk about bringing back coal, they forget why we banned it from our cities in the first place. The coal industry today doesn't exist in any meaningful way. There are a few mines left in the UK, but those mines produce a very small amount of coal, and that coal is not used for electricity generation at all. In fact, it's mostly used for steel making and specialist industrial processes. There are no operating deep coal mines capable of supplying power stations. There are no supply chains for large-scale coal to electricity generation. And there is no trained workforce that knows how to do this anymore. Everybody who worked in that industry has long since retired. So even if you wanted coal power tomorrow, there's nothing left to feed it. Now here's the knockout blow. Even if we had the coal, even if we had the people to mine it, even if we had the transport mechanism to move the coal from the mines to the power stations, there are no coal-fired power stations anymore. The last one was shut down a few years ago and is in the process of being dismantled as we speak. These sites would need to be rebuilt from the ground up with modern standards. It would require years of planning, environmental approvals, which have no chance of being granted, and a massive capital investment. All of this for the dirtiest possible electricity at a time when cleaner options are available. Coal wasn't paused, it's gone for good, and good riddance to it. Burning coal produces more CO2 per kilowatt hour than gas. Despite what Donald Trump says about clean coal, it does not exist. It produces particulates, including sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, both of which are really bad for you. It directly worsens public health. And legally, UK air quality laws, climate commitments, and planning frameworks make it impossible to restart the coal-fired power industry. Now, could a EU government change these laws? Yes, it could try, but it would take so long that government would probably been replaced by the next government who promised to bring down your energy bills. So, coal versus reality. Yes, coal employed a lot of people, but reopening coal would not recreate that workforce. Modern coal mines have a lot less people working in them. It is a hugely automated process. Power stations don't require a huge workforce like they used to. Again, they have been automated to the point where the workforce is tiny. It is there just to supervise the power station. Any jobs created by this would be really short-lived and very politically fragile. We already know what happens in this country when coal mining jobs go away. We lived through the miners' strike. We don't want that to happen again. And the reality is, with coal, you destroy public health to create a handful of temporary jobs, and even those probably wouldn't last. Now, to wrap this all up, I hope this hasn't come across as a left versus right argument. It's not about politics, it's about physics, economics, and reality. And reality doesn't care how loudly you shout drill, baby, drill. What you're being sold by these would-be politicians aren't real energy policies. They're applause lines. They're tweets on Twitter or X's or whatever we call them today. And applause lines don't heat your home. That's it for today's video. I hope you found this interesting. I've tried not to make this too political, but there are so many people who seem to believe that we can just drill for more gas, we can frack Britain, or we can reinstate the coal industry, that I thought it was worth laying out the arguments. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Now, before you go, if anyone does find these kind of videos useful, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And if you can, maybe sign up and join as a member. With that, I'm going to sign off. If I'm lucky, I'll see you back here real soon for another video. Take care. Bye-bye.